Howdy everybody, this is Omar, your Audio Amigo, here today with another Audio Amigo review for you guys. Today we're finally going to take a look at an IEM from Ziigaat. This is the very hyped Ziigaat Odyssey, priced at $230 US. This is the third cheapest member of what I'm going to call the big Ziigaats, costing a little bit more than the Arcadia and Lush, but less than the Arete. This here is a 4-driver hybrid. You get a single DD and 3 branded balanced armatures. It fights in what I think is one of the most competitive price brackets for IEMs, the sort of $175 to $250 range. Does the Odyssey live up to all the hype it's been getting? Well, let's find out. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking about the unboxing experience here because every single Ziigaat IEM from $130 on the Lush all the way up to $1,600 on the Jupiter has the exact same unboxing experience. You get the IEMs inside on a foam carrier. You get a small black carry case with the cable and a selection of ear tips inside. Those ear tips come in 2 forms. This is the orange tip that I call it. It's a soft tip, sort of standard bore silicone tip with orange cores, and you get a set of foam tips as well. And then this is the carrying case here. It's black leatherette. It's not got the best crush resistance, if I'm honest, and the zipper is a bit tough to get open, especially in the corners. The inside is very well thought out, though. You've got not the softest surface here, but it won't scratch up your IEMs or anything, and I really like this mesh pocket design. The sort of double entrance here makes it so that the small things you put in here don't fall out. I think that's very well thought out. I do wish the pouch was nicer. At $230, this level of included accessories is honestly pretty disappointing. The competition comes at you with modular cables, multiple options for ear tips, nicer carrying cases, and Ziigaat, by comparison, comes off a little bit wanting. Like with most Ziigaat sets, this is what I would consider the bare minimum of included accessories. I would really like a little bit more here, especially at this price. Speaking of sort of standard for Ziigaat, let's take a look at the cable, which is very similar to the one that you'll find on basically all of the other ones except for, I think, the 2.5 and the 5.3. Black 4-wire braid that splits into 2-wire twists at the Y-split. It's a little bit rubbery feeling, but it's not the worst cable in the world. It feels decent in the hands. The 3.5mm connector here is all metal and features nice Ziigaat branding. This is available with 4.4 if you prefer that connection. The Y-split here is a simple metal unit with no branding on it, and the chin slider, as you can see here, is the 2-hole variant. This one has a bit of a gap at the bottom here, but it still doesn't sit flush with the Y-split, which y'all know at this point kind of bothers me. The ear hooks here are fairly standard. They're comfortable in the ears, but they also don't feel particularly premium. They do the job. They're quite nice. The 2-pin connectors here are metal, and the knurling on them matches the rest of the hardware. In terms of stereo indication, the only indication that you're going to get here is the color of the plastics. You can see you've got red right there and then sort of a clear right there. There's no R and L markings, no colored stripes, no anything else. So I do wish it was clearer. Overall, I'm not the biggest fan of this cable at $230. It's not awful. It behaves decently well. The ear hooks, as I said, even if they don't look great, are comfortable. And it's not microphonic, and it doesn't, outright ruin the sound or the usability experience of the IEM. I just wish it was nicer. In terms of design and construction, like the cable, the Odyssey are typical Ziigaat. That is full 3D printed resin shells, very nice quality, with metal nozzles. The nozzles have metal filters on the tips to protect from debris, and it's overall very sturdily built. In terms of ventilation, you get nothing on the front here. You just get a single large mesh here on the sort of back of the IEM that vents everything on the inside. I did look with a flashlight. I could not see or confirm the presence of a base bypass tube, but I did not get any driver flex or pressure buildup with these. So however they're venting the front volume of that dynamic driver, it's working at least for me. The shape here is pretty standard. You've got a little bit of an indentation and a bit of a bulge there, but there's no sort of wing indent here. It's very basic sort of IEM shape, no odd protrusions or hard corners. Overall, these are pretty typical for full resin-shelled IEMs. I expect them to be about as durable as other IEMs that are built this way at this price point. Yeah, they're very nice, in my opinion. Let's go ahead and pull up the specifications on the Odyssey here. The Odyssey are a hybrid IEM, a 10mm topology diaphragm dynamic driver in charge of the low end. You have a pair of Knowles RAF 32873 balanced armatures for the mid-range, and a single Knowles RAD 33518 as a tweeter. Ziigaat IEMs are typically extremely easy to drive, and the Odyssey is no exception. With the low impedance and high sensitivity, I was able to easily drive this with my laptop, older Sony Xperia phone, CD player, anything, no issues or need for a dongle at all. The frequency response on the Odyssey, as is common with most of the Ziigaat hybrid IEMs, does change with impedance adapters or when used on a higher impedance source. We'll talk about that a little bit later. The weight and nozzle dimensions here are typical for a all-resin IEM in this price range, nothing too huge, nothing too heavy. I didn't have too many issues with those, but we'll talk about that later in the comfort. And honestly, overall, other than the branded balanced armatures, there's nothing too special going on here in terms of specifications. But now it's time for the cool wall. Ziigaat has a lot of IEMs in this price bracket, and they all boast sort of a similar design language. You get different types of glitter or sort of sparkly sand inlaid in the resin at sort of different heights. You can see how the silver sparkles are a little bit above the maroon sparkles here. I'll save my opinions on how it ranks versus the rest of the Ziigaat IEMs for my upcoming Ziigaat Buyer's Guide, which is 100% coming, by the way. Linsol's helping to make it happen. But for now, just know that this is one of my favorite Ziigaat faceplates. I do wish it came with different colors, kind of like what they did with the Arete. If this was blue and this was gold, I think it'd look really, really awesome. But the purple and silver combo, I think, looks very nice. I'm going to go ahead and stick these in cool. I think that the sort of finer, sandy purple sparkles with the larger silver sparkles is a good combo. I will say, if they did come in different colors, one of the color combinations might have ended up in Sub-Zero. I think it looks pretty sweet. This will be the Council of Ladies' first experience with a Ziigaat set, so I'm interested to see what they think of all the different designs. Let's go ahead and start with if it's pretty or not. Seems like an overall positive sentiment, 3 in favor, 1 against, and 1 meh. Not too bad overall considering. In terms of compliments, however, we swing towards no, 3-2 against the giving of compliments here. I guess they don't quite cross the compliment threshold for some of the ladies. But now let's go ahead and look at their thoughts. There is a decent amount of love for the sparkles and the sort of shiny sand here, but some of the ladies think that the shells themselves look a bit busy or bulky looking. Overall, I would say pretty positive impressions. Well done, Ziigaat. I think the ladies will like most of these, maybe a couple of exceptions, but we'll get into that as we review more of these. In terms of comfort, as you would expect from a large-eared gentleman like myself, a relatively normal-sized IEM with sort of average-sized nozzles isn't really going to pose an issue for me in terms of comfort. I was easily able to wear these for long, multi-hour listening sessions with no discomfort at all. The little bulge here on the front was no issue for me at all. The shell design for me was fine. For my wife, they were a bit large in her ears overall. These did end up getting a technical pass on the tiny ears test, which is the lowest of the passing grades. It's still a pass, however. She was able to form and maintain a shallow fit, but the size of the shells made it difficult to keep in her ears for longer periods. As you notice by the graphic, we are reworking the entire tiny ears test, so keep an eye out for that in the future. We're going to have a bit more of a range of pass and fail for these IEMs. So these, essentially a 3 out of 5 technical pass. Let's go ahead and talk about how these sound. The bass on the Odyssey features a very well executed bass boost. I feel like when the track calls for deep, punchy, low-end response, the Odyssey delivers that in spades. Tiesto and Seven's Boom, for example, has pretty good low-end texture with that rumbly, boomy bass line, and the higher frequency drops had a really nice punch to them. The texture here can be a little bit soft in the sub-bass for certain songs, but the mid-bass punch I thought was extremely satisfying on the Odyssey. Bass guitar and kick drum are very well emphasized. The bass line in Rush's YYZ I felt had an excellent presence and a really nice buzziness to the strings. It was a great replay overall. The bass on the Odyssey I think is very well executed, and for my personal tastes, it's just the right amount of boost to make the set feel dynamic without being overwhelming. Overall, I really like it. The boosted mid-bass here does lead to a slightly warmer lower mids presentation that, as y'all know, I tend to prefer. Tom Petty's Running Down a Dream, for example, replayed very well on these. His vocals were just that little bit darker and huskier, which I felt helped them stand out a little bit. There's also a big kick drum and a walking bass line that were very present in the mix, but didn't feel overwhelming like they could on a more like bass-focused or bass headset. The lower mids can come across a little bit veiled in some tracks, but it's veiled in that sort of pleasant mid-centric retro vibe kind of way. I honestly kind of like it. I don't think it's muddy. It's maybe borderline, but I think it's very, very well executed. Female vocals are a little bit further back than I would personally prefer, but it's not to the point where I feel like it ruins music. Tsunamaki Watame's What an Amazing Swing, for example. I feel like I'm hearing a lot more. There's a guitar in the right ear, and there's sort of horns over the track overall, and I feel like I'm hearing them a little bit more compared to Watame's vocals themselves. Again, it's not enough to ruin my enjoyment of the song. It's still an absolute banger, but it's something to consider if your library is absolutely full of female vocalists. Overall, I feel like the mid-range is tilted down a little bit. The lower mids are definitely emphasized, have that slight veil over them, while the upper mids are slightly pushed back. It isn't enough to cause, in my opinion, a massive tonal penalty to the overall timbre, but it's just where the emphasis is placed, and I wouldn't worry too much about that veil. It's just in certain songs that are mastered in a certain way. Overall, it's very clean. The upper mids match the sort of subdued female vocal presentation. Female vocal harmonics have what I feel is just the right amount of energy to help the vocals stand out a little bit. Cyndi Lauper's vibrato and those intentional sibilant moments in the choruses of Girls Just Want to Have Fun, they all throw off wonderful harmonics that all feel very present and very clear without being painful or piercing. They don't, stay too long or overstay their welcome. It's a very similar story with upper instrument and percussion harmonics. I feel like this set is walking the fine line between boring and too much in terms of instrument and percussion harmonics. It's the exact right amount to balance out that boosted bass, in my opinion. The drum rakes in the instrumental version of Christmas Time Is Here by the Vince Guaraldi Trio, I thought sounded very, very nice here. You can hear the different levels of force that Jerry Granelli is sort of applying to those rakes as he, drags them across the drum heads. If I was nitpicking, I would say that the treble maybe is missing a little bit of extra airiness, but I think that that's not horrible. That's not a bad thing. This is an extremely safe level of treble that should keep basically just about everybody happy except for like true treble heads. I think some extra airiness might make it a bit too much for some people, even if it is what I personally prefer. I think the treble overall is very well executed, at least for my tastes. This being a hybrid set, I had high expectations in terms of technical performance, and the Odyssey honestly didn't disappoint. The low, grumbly echo of the bass guitar in Rabbit Rumba's Nuestra Ayer had a really nice texture. It actually sounded like it was resonating off the studio walls, which it was when it was recorded. At the higher end of things, the Odyssey did pretty well on my Waltz for Debbie drinkware and conversation test. It didn't outright destroy the competition in this price range, but it did do very well with both the background conversation as well as the glassware. In terms of overall technical and resolving ability, I would slot this above the AFUL Performer 5 just barely. It doesn't quite reach the Performer 7, but as I'll discuss later, that's more because the Performer 7 boxes above its weight class in terms of technical performance. I think it's absolutely solid in this price range, and it's good. As with the technical performance, stereo separation on the Odyssey, I thought it was very, very nice. I listened to the entire Friday Night in San Francisco album, and it was, a lot of fun listening to the locations of each guitarist in the ears. I didn't get a sense of sort of center-focused or claustrophobic sound. It was a really great replay of the album in terms of staging. Imaging was really nice as well. In terms of perceived 3D soundstage, I listened to David Grisham's Doggy Mountain Breakdown, and the banjos, mandolins, guitars, bass guitar, and violins all filled the area around the ears pretty well. The replay didn't feel super tall or wide, but the set isn't mastered to be super tall or wide. I feel like the Odyssey doesn't hold back tracks that have sort of good spatial mastering. I would say the stereo separation is excellent, the image performance is very solid, and the perceived 3D soundstage is about average for the other IEMs at this price point. Before we jump into the comparisons, let's talk real quick about the effects of impedance mismatch, or the use of impedance adapters on the Odyssey. The Odyssey does change sound when you expose it to a higher output impedance source or when using an impedance adapter. I'll pull up the graph right here. As you can see, with a 15 ohm impedance adapter, the Odyssey becomes more V-shaped. You get increased bass, attenuated mids, and boosted upper mids and treble. It's not an enormous change, but it was noticeable to me in my testing. I did like it. Not enough to want to keep the impedance adapter on there permanently or pay for a Rudy rod cable, but it was kind of nice every once in a while to just mix things up. If you have an Odyssey and you want to change up the sound a little bit, try to find a 1530 ohm impedance adapter and just listen to it, see if you like it. So in terms of tuning, I'm going to go ahead and label the Odyssey as a sort of warm, neutral-ish tuning. It has boosted bass and treble, but they aren't boosted so much to the point that I feel it becomes a V-shaped set. The down-tilted mid-range, again, also helps with that sort of warmer tonality. It's a super relaxing listening experience, honestly. It's got non-fatiguing bass and treble, and those down-tilted mids make for a pretty chill listen. The $175 to $250 range, as I mentioned, is absolutely hopping with great IEMs. I'm limited to how many I can A/B test versus the Odyssey, but I think I've lined up what I think are the heavy hitters in this price range, so let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start, however, with a budget pick that's also going to be a bit of a graph talk segment. My Explorer is still out on loan. I'll get it back soonish, but I wasn't able to strictly A/B compare the Odyssey with the Explorer. That said, I have listened to the Explorer a lot. I do have another blue AFUL IEM here to stand in for it, just as a visual aid. Just take this segment with a grain of salt. It's more graph talk than actual A/B comparison. The Odyssey is what I would consider a very relaxing listening experience. The Explorer, however, is even warmer and more relaxing. The bass here has more impact, the lower mids are richer, and while it's more forward with vocals, the rest of the treble is more relaxed. This has the Explorer coming off sounding darker and warmer by comparison, and it's something that a lot of people tend to criticize about this. It sort of has a lack of top-end detail, and the bass presentation can be fatiguing is the main criticisms of this that I have heard. If you fall into that camp and you're looking for a relaxing set like this, but with less overall bass and a little bit more detail that doesn't end up being fatiguing, the Odyssey, I think, is a great sort of upgrade to this if you want those changes. Next, we've got a relatively new kit on the block. It is the EPZ P50, priced at $185 US. I haven't had this for too long, but I did give it a good A/B test here. To me, the P50 came off as a brighter, more vocal-forward tuning when compared to the Odyssey. The Odyssey has more bass quantity, but they're very similar in overall bass quality. Female vocals are definitely more forward and have more prevalent harmonics on the P50 versus the Odyssey, and the P50 overall, I think, has a more exciting presentation. While the overall level of treble is similar, the P50 does have a bit more sparkle and airiness going on, and I think because of that, it ends up coming across as a tiny bit more detailed, not by a massive amount, but I think some people who perceive detail up in that range will think that this is more detailed. The Odyssey is 100% the safer, more relaxing listening experience. The P50 is not what I would call straight up bright by any means. It's also sort of a neutral-ish set, but it's tilted a little bit less towards the bass than the Odyssey would be, and is therefore just that little bit more exciting and contrasty sounding versus the Odyssey. Next up, we have the KiwiEars KE4, what I feel is one of the benchmarks in this price range. And yeah, I went ahead and bought one because I needed to have one for A/B comparison purposes since this whole price range is getting super competitive. The JM1/meta tuning on the KE4 comes off as more V-shaped compared to the Odyssey. You get more bass, you get more treble. While both of these sets can have what I feel is a little bit soft sub-bass, the Odyssey punches a little bit cleaner in the mid-bass, even if it punches less overall than the KE4. The KE4 has airier, sparklier, sort of more energetic highs, and that sort of combined with the boomier bass on here means that, again, it comes off much more V-shaped and contrast sounding than the Odyssey. Both of these kind of have those subdued vocals that I was talking about, so if you have a lot of female artists in your library, I wouldn't necessarily pick either of these. The Odyssey is the much safer tuning. I know people were saying that the KE4 can be a bit fatiguing with the bass and a bit fatiguing in the treble. Not to me personally, but if you're one of the people that did think that, the Odyssey is a much safer pick. Now we come to the big one, what I think is the Odyssey's closest competition. It's my IEM of the year for 2024, the AFUL Performer 5+2, priced at $240 US. Now, this is probably the set that I spent the most time A/B listening volume matched with the Odyssey. While I would describe both of these as sort of warm neutral, the Odyssey is the more laid back and relaxing listening experience of the two. In terms of bass, the dual 6mm in the Performer 7 give off what I feel is a cleaner, faster sub bass texture, even if the Odyssey has more sub bass rumble in general. This will rumble more in your ears, but this rumble will sound a little bit nicer to me. In the mid bass, quality is about the same, honestly. The topology diaphragm here is really doing its work. This is definitely a win in terms of quantity, though. This one just hits harder than this. The quality is about the same. The mids are largely the same. The difference that I hear the most is the Performer 7 does females' vocals better than the Odyssey. They're just more forward, more present. The tonal balance is still excellent. There's more of a spotlight on them compared to the Odyssey. This is not what I would call a vocal forward set, but it sounds like one when you're A-Bing it with the Odyssey. In terms of treble, while the lower mids are overall similar in energy, the Performer 7 has the ability to reach higher. It sounds sparklier, it sounds airier, it just comes across as the more resolving and detailed of the two sets. That said, I have seen comments and lots of other people saying that the Performer 7 can be a little bit tiring in the air specifically. Nothing that I've experienced personally, and I would not call this a fatiguing set by any means. You can see my review for this. But I did come away from this texting experience preferring the Performer 7 over the Odyssey, mostly because of that extra detail and airiness. It has that while still being, relatively warm, not as warm as this. If you're one of the people that did think that the Performer 7 was a little bit too bright, then I say check out the Odyssey. It could be just what the doctor ordered. Real quick, I just wanted to bring out the Ziigaat Arete here, not for a full comparison, but just for like a quick chat. These will get a full comparison with each other in my big Ziigaat Buyer's Guide video that is coming, I promise. But for now, I just wanted to talk really quickly here. The Odyssey is warmer, chilled out, more relaxing than the Arete. The Arete is airier, the mids are a bit cleaner, it's much more vocal forward, and it has much more of that treble sparkle and airiness, as I said, compared to the Odyssey. The Arete also has that soundstage party piece that it was literally tuned from the ground up with imaging and soundstaging in mind, something to keep in mind here. Odyssey has, in my opinion, much more satisfying bass, much better lower mids, but it does not have that same sort of airy sparkliness that either of these two have. Just wanted to talk about it really quick. Like I said, full comparison will come, I promise. Just wanted to mention it in case someone was on the fence between these two. So let's see if we can speed run a bit of a wrap up here. Explorer, warmest, most relaxing set here. Big boomy bass, de-emphasized treble. If you wanted less bass and more treble, the Odyssey is here for you. Still very relaxing, still very warm, still very chill, but enough treble to counterbalance the reduced bass that this has compared to the Explorer. Fantastic set here. P50, more vocal forward than the Odyssey. Very good resolution on it at its price. I think it's a fantastic value. This will get a full review later. KE4, representative of the JM1/Meta tuning here. Probably one of the more fun sets here. Big boosted bass, boosted treble, but not to the point, in my opinion, where it's fatiguing. Just overall very well balanced. Like a lot of the sets on this table, fantastic all-rounder. Performer 7, my IEM of the year for 2024 for a reason. Still love it. Of the sets on this table, I think it's the most detailed and the most resolving. The tuning is just really clean for me. It's not fatiguing for me. I vibe with this IEM very well, and I think it's the best looking here. Finally, you have the Arete, tuned by Fresh Reviews here for use in competitive shooters. That results for me in music as a very wide soundstage with very precise imaging. The low end can be a little bit lean for me, but if you like those clean mids, this is a great IEM for gaming and for music. And then, yeah, like I said, back to the Odyssey, very relaxing, warm, neutral, very, very well balanced. If you have any of the IEMs on this table, you have a great, amazing all-rounder set. This comparison was a lot of fun to listen to, and it took forever because I would legitimately just constantly be listening to music on every single one of these. They all sound fantastic. If you have one of the IEMs on this table, congratulations, you've got a great set on your hands. But enough about how everything is nice. You're not here to hear me talk about other IEMs. You're here to find out where the Ziigaat Odyssey is going to wind up on the Audio Amigo Arbitrary rating scale. We'll start with the bad news. This accessories package is the bare minimum of what I think is acceptable at this price range. I gave the KE4 a hard time for its accessories package, and the Odyssey at $30 more is also going to get points taken off here. You provide such a great sound with such a premium audio experience in the IEM itself. I'm not asking for a lot here. I just want a slightly sturdier case that doesn't bow in like that. I want more than just one set of ear tips and a modular cable. I don't think it's a ton to ask. It would just be nice. In terms of sound, though, like I said, I really like the Odyssey. I think the most negative things I can say about it are that it's maybe a little bit boring. I personally don't think it is, but I could see how people who are used to a more V-shaped sound signature would find it boring. I personally think it's got very dynamic bass and just enough treble sparkle and shine to balance it out. I think it's a relaxing, all-round tuning with the only real weak points being the fact that it's neutral and how it handles female vocals. The sub bass, I said, can be a bit soft, but those things are nitpicks. Like, soft sub bass is the kind of thing that I nitpicked about the KE4. It's also a nitpick here. Female vocals is a preference thing. Some people will really prefer the fact that they're a bit further back. Other people, it'll be a bit more of a deal breaker. I legit think Ziigaat has done a really great job here. I think this is a great balance between energy and relaxation. The Odyssey is going to go up in This Is Brilliant. The tuning just ticks off a lot of boxes for me. I think this set will make a lot of people very happy. I think it looks good. Cables can be upgraded, cases can be gotten aftermarket, and tips, well, yeah, I'm not a fan of these tips. The Ziigaat Odyssey does a lot of things very well, but there are some people who I wouldn't recommend it for. If you are a bass head or a treble head, while there is great detail and energy at both ends of the spectrum here, bass heads will be left wanting more, and the same will be for treble heads. This is just, I think, too neutral to satisfy both of those groups. Also, if you have a library full of female vocalists and you love K-pop, J-pop, that sort of music, this might not be to your tastes. In my opinion, it just pushes vocals a little bit too far back for me to really enjoy all of that music if my library was full of it. Also, nitpick, if you're the kind of person that prefers all metal shells, you might not be happy with full resin at this price point, but I think most of the market is moving towards full resin at this price point, so hold out for something metal if that's what you want. However, if you don't mind the all resin, I certainly don't, and you're looking for a neutral set that's colored enough to have good flavor to it, decent bass boost, a little bit of extra treble, I think this is a great option. If you thought the Explorer was too dark and the Performer 7 was too bright, this right here is your middle ground. This is a fantastic pick. I think this is honestly a really good sort of one-and-done set. If you're looking for an IEM at sort of the $200, $250 price range, so long as you have a library that isn't absolutely packed with female vocals, I think this is an excellent sort of buy it once and be done set. It's great at basically everything, the quality's nice, and it's just really, really solid at this price. And that's going to do it for the Ziigaat Odyssey review. I have a few other Ziigaat reviews coming in the next week or two, which is going to be leading up to the very long-awaited Ziigaat Buyer's Guide. This is a video that I've been wanting to do for 6 months, but every single time I'm ready to sort of start filming, Ziigaat announces another set of IEMs. It's happening this time for real. I don't care if Ziigaat announces more IEMs. Linsel sent me the Lush and the Arcanus, and we're doing it. So those two will get a review, and then you'll get a big, giant Ziigaat Buyer's Guide, hopefully just in time for some big sales. So look forward to that. But for now, that's going to do it. This has been Omar with Audio Amigo Reviews. Thank you all for watching. I'll catch you all next time.